Elevation Nation, we have on tonight an incredible human being, a wonderful guest, and I'm so honored that he is about to be an elevator. Pun intended, he wears a lot of hats. Right now, he's wearing a Maryland hat because he knew he had to suck up to me and Parker
That's
on our
right.
podcast as Terps.
Yep.
But this man, Vance Row, he wears a lot of hats, some that I'm going to have to let him explain because it sounds like he is doing so many things from entrepreneurship, from men's mental health, from his past careers. We were talking football. We were talking being Maryland fans. But overall, he's just an incredible human being with a mission that aligns so much with Parker and myself of trying to paint men's mental health in a more positive light, to get young men to open up about their emotions, their feelings, and to work on their minds just like they work in the gym. So, Vance Rowe, welcome to Elevation Nation. We are so honored to have you on the
Well, thanks,
podcast.
guys. It is my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's an honor to have you. I can also sense, I'm a Baltimore guy. I can see the accent. Sam might not be able to pull it out.
Okay.
There's some Maryland accent in there.
Okay. Well, I can show you my Oriole tattoo. I mean, if
Okay,
you
I
really want
knew
to
it.
know, like,
Yeah,
if
I
you really,
definitely knew it.
want to, so born and raised in Baltimore County, like Woodlawn area. So yeah, way to pick it up right away.
Hey, listen, I grew up in Baltimore. Yeah, and you know the roll in Baltimore, right? The D instead of the T. You get it. Well, Vance, we're pumped to have you. Obviously, love the hat and the fact that you are, spend so much time in Ocean City. It's a place that's near and dear to my heart and my family. But we give the opportunity to every new elevator to share their elevator pitch to tell Elevation Nation what you're all about. So, Vance, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you're up to.
Absolutely. So I am the easiest way to put it is I'm a retired police officer turned yoga teacher that does a lot of speaking and things about men's mental health. And the whole reason why is because of the suicide problem within first responders, and most specifically with male first responders. A lot of people are like, dude, how do you go from police officer to yoga teacher? And I'm usually like, well, there was some like stuff. And usually I do like presentations about the stuff. And look, the career caught up with me. And, I had my own stuff. I was kind of in a hole, is the way I put it, for a while. And my coping mechanism was booze. And, after a while, that just doesn't work anymore. And finally, it comes down to uh, two things: a conversation with my wife about actually me wanting to end my own life, and then a second, there was a confrontation where she actually videotapes me while I was intoxicated and shows it to me the next day, and she says, "Hey, dude, we got to talk." And I don't know that she intended for what that did, but it essentially shocked me into sobriety. And that moment was the last time that I drank, and that was a little more than 6.5 years ago. From that point, I knew what yoga was, but I'd never been to a yoga studio before. So I go to a yoga studio. I love it. Within the first month of practicing, I tell her that I'm going to teach it to people like me. I enrolled in a teacher training program about as fast as I could. And now, fast forward 5 years, I've picked up all kinds of different training. I've gotten the opportunity to teach and train with all different types of folks. And now I spend a good amount of my time teaching people that have no idea what yoga is and have some preconceived notion about what they think it is. And then so I want to break that stigma as well.
Well, it's an incredible story that I know we're going to dive into. And Vance, thanks for opening up on some of your, hard times as well as the positives that you're now making of your life. Remember vividly myself playing high school basketball, and I had this incredible coach and mentor in my life, Pat Ambrose, who listens to the podcast every now and then. So I'll have to send him this clip.
Okay.
In our, sophomore, junior, senior year, during the summer, every Friday, instead of going to the weight room, we would go do yoga.
Really?
And I remember thinking, what a weird, we're trying to win a state championship here. Why are we doing yoga. He's yelling,
Right.
down dog. That's exactly how you do it in that voice. And you
Right.
got 6'6" guys trying to stretch into these positions. And I remember he was probably the first mentor in my life that not only showed me yoga, but showed the impact that working on your mindset and mindset strength has. Now, Vance, I know you know my family. I'm about 5'8", maybe on a good day.
Right.
So to
Okay.
make a basketball team, it was not because of my basketball skills. I'll just put it that
Right.
way.
Okay.
And I think that exposure in young people's lives to the impact that your mindset can have on your performance, on your energy, on how you think about the world is so important. And so I'm just excited to dive into your story more because I think for many people, police officers, football players, whatever it may be, they sometimes look down upon using your mind as a muscle.
Right. And I'll tell you something. So, and this maybe like the 90s. I graduated high school in 95. I graduated college in 99, and I played football all through high school. I played football all through college, and everything was about physicality. They cared about like weightlifting. They cared about how fast can you run a 40-yard dash, how many reps of a bench press and a squat. But I'm telling you right now, that is not anything that we worked on. And the only thing that was ever talked about as far as mindset was is when you're down by 4 points and there's a minute and a half left and you're facing adversity, like that's when you define who you are. And so that's what you wanted to do, but it's nothing about like training your mind and like going through this imagery or going through like role playing, anything like that they do now.
I imagine it being very, I mean, I was born in 1995, so I can't say I was plugging into the mindset
Ooh,
podcast, if podcasts were
right,
even a thing,
right,
right? Or,
right.
had a coach in the late 90s, besides my parents. Shout out mom and dad. But I imagine it was very, almost like cliche motivation in a sense. Like, you guys got this. You can push through, one
Right.
more rep. You mind over matter, just kind of just telling you and
So so
pushing you
listen, like
hard.
listen, there'd be like winter workouts and so on like Tuesday and Friday morning we get up at 5:30 and they would just run us. And and they put out like a bunch of trash cans and that was the goal I think of the coaches. Like they wanted to see us throw up. And then at that point, you just hear this like quit being a bunch of pussies. Thanks guys. So yeah, it was all about not wanting to let that coach down.
Mm,
So you don't ever want to show any sign of weakness.
it was a
And
fear
I feel like
thing in
that's
a
it
sense.
is. It is. And what I'd always heard about coaching was like you play for the ones that you fear and the ones that you love. Uh, I was afraid of my high school coach, but I loved my college coach.
Resonates with me a lot. Very similar experience, and we could talk. We might have to do a reminiscence podcast just about our high school glory days. Parker playing catcher in
Okay.
Baltimore, Maryland, and you Vance, and then me in Chicago. But I want to spend a little bit of time here talking about your evolution. So we went from high school athlete, college athlete. You got into law enforcement. Talk to us about that transition from, college football Vance to now I'm serving my community. I'm getting into a new career. I'm becoming a young adult. And the reason I bring this up is we think that those years are the most formative for young people, young men
Yeah.
especially, that no
Yeah.
one helps us through. And that's where my darkest times came. So I'm curious what that transition was like for you.
So for me, um, I really I had been in Ocean City as a summer cop for a couple summers. And this is while I was in college, and then every fall I'd go back and I actually end up doing my college internship in Ocean City. I had applied to a bunch of different agencies, and I wasn't getting picked up. It was really hard in the late '90s, early 2000s to get jobs, and Ocean City was hiring like one a year. Um, I actually gave it one more shot, and I was applying to there, and I was applying to Salisbury City, and I ended up getting hired because I had it in my mind because I couldn't hear I couldn't hear this rejection of no again because it was really starting to weigh on me. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not good enough? Because it really starts to make you question what kind of person you are. Um, So if I didn't get one of those two jobs, I was going to go into the military, and I was just going to go into like officer candidate school and just go from there. Still service, just on a different level. Anyway, so I get into the police academy, and I mean the first thing is I was an offensive lineman in college, so I had to shed a little bit of weight so I could actually run this mile and a half like they wanted me to. I mean, I'm not a small person, but I needed to not be 330 pounds anymore. Um, I really started to look up to certain people in my police department, and I really wanted to work like them. But um, we weren't talking about like feelings or how things made us feel. We were talking about, oh, I'm supposed to work 60 hours a week. Okay, I'll do better. I'm supposed to shoot at a 95 percentile. Okay, I'll work on that. I'll do that. And so it's all this pressure about physicality and how many arrests do you have and how many tickets did you write. Nobody's talking about any of that other stuff. And if you go back in time, I was a horrible middle school and high school student academically. When I get to college, the light finally goes on for me. So I actually do really well in college. And then when I get into the police academy, I feel like that I was finally like, oh, well, this is what I want to do. So I get it, and it actually makes sense to me. So I did really well in the police academy too. Um, I actually feel fortunate that I met people in my college that were practitioners, so I was being taught by actual police officers and actual attorneys. And my experience in Ocean City actually made it even better because, like, I'm learning about it, and then I'd go do it. And then after doing it, I'd come back and I'd be like, oh, now that makes sense. And so that was actually one of the ways that I felt very beneficial. Uh, I don't feel like I really found like a maybe like a professional mentor or anything like that for a couple years on the job because
Mm.
every supervisor was different. Every shift was different, and you're just trying to find like your place. Uh, and I'll tell you right now that I would struggle every single summer, and I would struggle because uh, so typically like a police officer works 4 10-hour shifts a day. Well, in Ocean City, you're expected to work 5 to 6 10-hour shifts a week. Um, and what that starts to do to you is it just wears you down and you have no time to do anything else. You're not focusing on yourself because all that it's about is that you just show up for your next shift. And I mean, I'd be lying if I told you that I was like 100% at every single one of those because there were
Mm.
days where I'm like, oh, I just don't want to go. I just can't do this another night. And I mean, it was even in my first year of getting out of the police academy, I was already starting to have pangs of maybe I made a mistake and maybe I should look at something else.
Well, clearly you had a tremendous impact, right? 22 years as a police
Yeah,
officer.
22. Yep.
And I think it probably, I mean, through all the ups and downs and everything in between that you've experienced, what's one thing that kept you going when things got really, really hard? What was that thing that you reminded yourself of that kept you going?
I always felt like I was a really good uh, employee. I was a really good friend. I was a really good teammate. And I always wanted to be somebody that other people could look up to. So even when I feel like I wasn't at my best, I felt like somebody else was looking at me, so I better fake it. Uh, but sadly, I wasn't ever opening up to anybody to tell them like, "Hey, I'm not doing terribly good." Like I would have like these spurts where I would like kind of blow up at my wife because I was just my fuse was so short. Um, and eventually, that's how I end up like going to therapy and things like that because I had pushed down so much of that for so long, and then it just starts to kind of feed out at different times and times that I didn't want it to.
You know, I find it a little bit ironic that Parker and I both work in Big Four consulting, a pretty cushy desk job, and they offer us as a benefit 25 therapy sessions a year
Really?
as table stakes.
Huh.
And it's great. Love it. I use all 25 of them because Parker and I obviously think of working on yourself and your emotions as a muscle. But I find it maybe a little disappointing that in a career path that I know is much more uh, stressful on your emotions. I don't know if they probably didn't have any resources 22 years ago when you first started, or maybe I'm wrong.
So they, so if you're not aware, when you go through a police background, you have to go through a psychological evaluation where a doctor has to evaluate your like candidacy to be a police officer. Um, and then that's it. So essentially, all right, best of luck to you. You know, hopefully you retire. Hopefully you make it. Um, and this has not been a thing. And I'm going to tell you, largely, it's not a thing still. And the idea of therapy in and I'm going to say a male police officer's life, it's still a dirty word because they're like, well, what if my agency finds out that I'm talking to somebody? And if I'm talking to somebody, then obviously there's something wrong with me. And um, I can tell you right now that uh, there are police officers that don't go to therapy, or if they do, they won't use their insurance because they're afraid that it'll go to human resources, and and somebody from internal affairs is watching that, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, they're in therapy. We better investigate them." That's the level of paranoia that's out there. So they think to themselves, "All right, well, I'm the one that's supposed to have it together all the time, and I'm supposed to be the one that's fixing everybody else's problems. Well, I better not ever tell anybody that I have problems." And that's leading to a huge problem.
And to your point, I mean, we're gonna get a little deeper here to the point when you said you reverted to alcohol to escape, some places to escape. Was that the case? That you, instead of going inward, you were looking to something outward to
So what I will tell you now, and I didn't intentionally know I was doing this. And I'm not going to tell you that I developed a drinking problem in my 30s or into my 40s. I mean, I had a drinking problem when I was in college. I just didn't think I had a drinking problem because everybody drank like I did. And then nothing changed when I went into the police world. It was the same thing. We worked really hard, but then we would play really hard too. Uh, so literally, it was almost the same lifestyle. Um, it's not until, and I think most people like aged out of that, and it wasn't like I was drinking every day in my 20s and in my 30s, but when I would drink, I drank like I was the life of the party. Um, So there gets to be a point that later on that I'm literally drinking every single day. And I would just go to work and I would just get madder and madder and madder. And then I would come home and a drink would actually settle it down. I didn't know I was doing that to cope. I didn't know I was doing that to numb. I just remembered a time that drinking was fun and brought joy into my life. And listen, it's fun until it's not. And I mean, there had been conversations with my wife just because I had gotten out of control a number of times, and she was like, "Look, I don't want to babysit you anymore." Uh, and then I think I think she just kind of took this last step of like, "All right, I see this. Maybe you don't see it because you're so blown out. So I'm going to show it to you. This is what you look like." And boys, I don't know if you know how uncomfortable that conversation was. And the whole reason I stopped drinking was because I didn't want to have that conversation. it wasn't it wasn't like I stopped forever because I was like, all right, well, I saw these videos, I'm never going to drink again. It was, I don't ever want to have this talk again. So I'm not going to drink for the next 24 hours. And I just started putting days and weeks and months together. And that's kind of how we got to where we got now. Uh, and it's not for the first, I'd say, 2 years. I was what they call dry drunk, where I was not drinking, but I was not exploring why I did that. And that's really when the work happens. That's why programs like AA, when you start going through the steps, because you start exploring why is it I did like why did I do that to myself? What else is going on in my life? And you start to peel back and you start to figure some things out. Uh, that's when the healing started. Was probably like year 3.
So Parker and I at Elevation Nation, Vance, we teach something when we speak across the US to young people that we call mental fortitude. And we break that down for them into three key parts: knowing yourself, who you are at your core, your vision of where you want to go, and your fuel of what drives you. And it sounds so basic and it sounds so silly, but that skill of introspection and being able to look within, not saying you're successful at it, but just the ability to open your eyeballs inside your own mind is something extremely difficult and becoming more difficult for the next generation that is numb and used to dopamine addiction, swiping and scrolling on social media.
That's right.
And it is why we are so passionate. And I know you have a similar mission for maybe a different demographic, but we're so passionate about people being able to gain the skills to look inward because we think that's how you become your best self and your best member of society then. And
That's
so
right.
I want to ask you, obviously you had or didn't have that difficult conversation with your wife to kind of, Parker and I like to call that the oh shit moment,
Oh
where
yeah.
things turn around for you and you go, shit, I need to make some changes. And so I want to talk to you about how that helped you look inward, develop those, self-reflection skills. And then where did yoga come into play into all this? Because I know that's kind of the new
It
passion.
was so sure. Good question. So in the beginning, it wasn't like I was really doing that self exploration. It was just like, uh, Amy sees this as a problem, so I need to not do it. But I wasn't doing the exploration piece of it. Um, and then like the questions and the therapy would start, um, maybe a little bit down the road from there. And it started to come about, they would talk about, well, how were you raised? And they start talking and it all starts at childhood. Um, but then like, how are you conditioned? But that started to make more sense to me. Like, this is why I react the way I react to certain things. So agree. I don't fault my therapist because she gives me homework sometimes. But again, it's all about exploration. Um, Yoga comes in because, all right, so let me back up a little bit. I hurt my back significantly two times in my law enforcement career in '08 and '09. And then through physical therapy and things like that, I had tried yoga at my house on, um, like a DVD. I mean, you kids know what DVDs are, right? Okay, I'm not. But anyway, I did it at my and the important part, like I'm following along with the guy that I see on the screen, and I'm just trying to keep up. And I actually think to myself, oh, they actually have studios, but I can't go to those because I'm not going to be able to keep up. And look how big I am, and man, I sweat an awful lot. So uh, it wasn't until Amy has this conversation with me, and I'm like, I've been talking myself out of this for years. So the confrontation was on a Tuesday. On that Saturday morning, honestly, there's a yoga studio 2 miles from my house, and I said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna just try it. I'm gonna go." And I couldn't scientifically tell you why I felt better, but from the time I walked in to the time that I uh, ended 60 minutes later, I felt better. Not fixed, but it improved my mood. Yes, I got a little workout out of it. I got a little stretchy, but my head felt better. It slowed things down. That's why I kept going back because, uh, when you start using like breath to actually like use your, to, when you can start realizing that you can use your breath to settle your own central nervous system down, and you have that all the time, that literally, when you're sitting in your car and somebody cuts you off and you want to scream lots of bad words and you want to make obscene finger gestures, maybe you just take like 3 deep breaths and you figure it out. And again, that is tools that you possess, that every single one of us possesses. We just got to tap into it and understand what we're doing. So that was my gateway. Honestly, that was, I start into that. Um, and it wasn't until I go into a training program called Warriors at Ease, which is it was born in the military, and it's all about yoga and meditation for combat vets. And the way they explain the science of why yoga works, and I just literally was like, oh my god, it's so easy. But it's the way they presented it, and it's all about trying to get your body out of these fight or flight responses, which is uh, first responders. That's where they live in those heightened, and you can't. You're not intended to live like that. But the other people that do, that I didn't realize until I started watching more documentaries about mental health and things like that, are these high level athletes, because of the pressure that they are constantly under. And that's why that becomes so important that that they do some level of training for their mind.
It's a powerful take, Vance. I appreciate you sharing. I think Sam and I have dove in our own lanes over the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, especially since the advent of Elevation Nation, into breath work, meditation. I'm getting more into yoga. I'm more in the meditation world, but I can think we both agree with you wholeheartedly that the idea that you can control something like your breath can actually change not only the course of a moment, but that moment translates into an hour or even a day or even a month. Who knows?
Right.
But it's those
Right.
little moments that stack up. And I also appreciate what you said around the nervous system, that many are in fight or flight mode. You said first responders or athletes, but you know what? I think through all the conversations that Sam have is that a lot of other people have unregulated nervous systems too. And it's probably because they're overstimulated. They feel as if they got to respond to that text that continues to come in, the
Exactly
ping that
right.
they get at work, or that social media dopamine hit. Is that more and more people, I'm not a doctor, I'm not sitting here, but I can make a hypothesis that you probably have more people who are acting in that fight or flight mode than ever before, right? We're not comfortable sitting in nothing. We're not comfortable
No.
sitting bored. We're really
Right.
bad at being bored.
Yep.
And
Right.
our species was kind of meant to be bored for, the up until what? How long ago, where you could just get anything at any time?
Yeah.
People
Right.
just sat around and they had conversations and they made food and they did what they needed to do to provide resources to, keep their family secure. And so I just appreciate you, Vance. I got a question. If you were to convince one person who had never gone to yoga or thought yoga was even woo woo, what would you say to them to convince them to come with you?
So I generally tell people, so it's funny you say that. So a lot of times people have a preconceived notion about what yoga is, and that you got to wear leggings, and that it's only for girls, and you got to be able to touch your toes. So, I usually just kind of tell people, I'm like, listen, can you breathe? And like, yeah, okay. Uh, can you move a little bit? Like, I don't care if you can't put your ankles like behind your head. I don't care if you can't like be on a headstand or something like that. All it is, it's breath, movement, and I'm going to play some music that you probably recognize. And I'm probably going to give you just a couple points of mindfulness as we go. And that I usually ask people, um, by the end of it, like, what did you think? And most people are like, I didn't know it could be like that. Uh, and I just teach different, than maybe other people. And I also understand that most of the people that I'm teaching, not my studio classes, but when I go teach first responders, or I teach at different agencies, uh, most of those people have never done anything like this. So it's got to be very basic, and then I just want them to start using their breath to get into movement, and then I actually cue a couple times throughout the whole thing. You talked about stillness, Parker. I actually make them get still and maybe close their eyes and just notice what's going on in their body. And I don't need you to do anything about it. Just stop. And most of us are very uncomfortable at those moments. And it's not until uh, it's not until we start to lean into those discomforts that we actually start to find growth. So we got to start just making ourselves uncomfortable a little bit more often.
Parker and I often try to challenge ourselves and our guests to get outside of our comfort zone because that is where we can elevate into the best versions of ourselves. And so
Listen, whenever you guys are ready to do the cold plunges, I do them like twice a week.
I love it.
I got my own little homemade system out back. Uh, yeah, I'm all about it. And
We're coming over.
people think I'm nuts.
I will do it with you in 20 degrees, and I'll do it with you in 85 degrees.
Okay, deal.
It will suck, but that's kind of the
Oh, it does.
point.
Listen, it sucks. I
But
mean,
you know what?
but
You're going to be fine. That's
yeah,
the way I think about it. You're not
exactly
going to
right.
freeze. You'll be
Nope.
fine.
Yep.
Now, if you're in
Breathe.
there for 25 minutes, you may freeze, but
No, I
Don't
usually
do
cut.
that.
I usually cut it at 15.
that's a long time.
We'll work up to that. We'll
Okay.
work up to that. Vance, I
All right,
want to
well,
get us into our next section, which is
go
our
ahead.
rapid fire questions. But
Yeah,
before
go
we do
for it.
that, I just wanted to give you the opportunity, obviously, as the founder of Yoga Rescue, you mentioned a little bit about what you're doing, but what is next for you, your mission, and how you're trying to spread mindset and yoga to those that need it the most?
To be honest, if you're asking me for my business plan, I don't entirely know. I am a police officer turned yoga teacher
Fair
with
enough.
zero business sense. So I would I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you what I'd like to do. Uh, I don't make any aspirations of like owning a studio or anything like that, but the base level that you need to have in order to teach in any yoga teacher training is a 200-hour training program. What I would like to do at this point is I would like to develop my own 200-hour training program that I can take like a working cop or firefighter or veteran and literally turn them into a yoga teacher. That they don't have to go to a yoga studio. Um, that we can literally maybe curtail it. That it is more about uh, like central nervous system regulation, breath work, movement, anatomy, that kind of stuff, um, and start turning out some other folks that can teach yoga to first responders and veterans.
For a police officer who says he doesn't have a business plan, I'd say that's from two business guys. That's a damn good business plan. I love that model. Parker and I, we'll talk with you after on some ideas that we have, but I think that is beautiful. So Vance, we have our next section. It's rapid
All right,
fire.
all right.
You're used to this. Under pressure,
Okay.
high
Okay.
stress. Take a couple deep breaths.
All right.
First thing that comes to mind, we want the answer. No thinking. I'm now into yoga. Parker knows a little bit. What's your favorite yoga position?
It's a floating half moon. That's my favorite.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I
Not
might have
any,
to. I
not
don't
it,
know if I
not
know that one.
so. I'll have to send you a picture of it.
Okay.
But that was
Let's see if I can look
it's
it
a
up.
balancing pose, but it's also a twisting pose. Uh, that's still my favorite. That's been my
Okay.
favorite almost from the get go. And I actually went to a class this morning and we got to do it, and I was like, yes.
Jazzed up. I love it. There you go.
All right, mine is Vance. You have someone you care about, who you love, who you spent a lot of time with in your life, and they came to you with the sentiment that they're not doing well. What's your advice to that individual?
I just want to sit and talk with them and say like what's going through your mind right now, and I tell people like right up front, look, I'm not a clinician, I'm not a therapist, but I'm somebody that has some lived experience, and I I, I might be able to offer some resources and thoughts that maybe even a doctor or a clinician or a therapist can't. So I'm always about having a conversation, and nobody else has to know. It can certainly be by text. It can be by I actually get at this point some of our friends will reach out like their college age kids are kind of struggling, and they're like, can you talk to them for a little bit? And so that's what we do. Just whatever they're comfortable talking about, and
It's
just
beautiful.
go from there. They just I sometimes I feel like you just need somebody that gives a shit and to listen. That's
Mm.
it. And because I'm not there to fix anything. I'm just there to support you and maybe let you think about some things that you're not thinking about.
Yeah, the AI is not enough. Actually getting to see someone virtually is nice, but being with someone in person
Yeah.
when you can
When you
physically
can, well, yeah,
hold a
when you can
space
literally sit
together,
next to somebody and you can just give somebody a hug, that's powerful.
hell yeah.
It's a beautiful gift. Well, Vance, I want to end with what we call our mental motto question. Parker and I have asked every elevator that has come and joined us on the podcast this, and also when we speak around the country to high schools, colleges, camps, and corporations, we train thousands of young people to get one of these, this mental motto. It's a phrase that embodies who you are at your core and helps you when times get tough. And so, Vance Row, we want to ask you, what is your mental motto?
So every time I get into those positions where I'm like, and I don't mean like physical yoga positions, but I mean like you get kind of like stuck in those like I don't want to do this. This is gonna suck. Um, there's a guy named Joseph Campbell that he was an author, philosopher, and he comes up with this concept of the hero's journey. And he has this quote that this cave that you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. So this thing that you refuse to do and that you keep procrastinating, what if that's the key that like all of a sudden opens the vault and you're like, oh my God, that's it. So that's why I push people to be uncomfortable. When you keep doing the same thing over and over again and you're just like miserable, look, you got to change something. So, that thing that you fear to do, that thing that you're like, I can't do this or I don't want to do this, maybe you try it once
Hmm.
because maybe that holds the treasure you seek.
Elevation is on the other side of fear, but you got to push for that through that fear to get there. And Vance, I couldn't agree with you more. I know Sam wholeheartedly agrees, and I just want to say on behalf of myself, Sam, Elevation Nation, Vance, just appreciate you as a person coming to spend time with us, keeping it real as well, and all the work you're doing both with in the police officers, with veterans, with people who just need someone to talk to. We need more people like you in the world, and we are just so excited to welcome you to Elevation Nation. So, just
Oh, this is
big
great.
thank you.
I was so happy to do this. So happy to spend a little time with both of you. Just very appreciative of the opportunity. Thank you guys.
Until next week, Elevation Nation. Peace.